For the fourth straight season, the Tampa Bay Lightning have been bumped from the playoffs in the first round. The lack of perceived progress is unsettling for a fan base that knows this team isn't getting any younger. But I want to provide some perspective because losing in the first round probably isn't the issue. In 2023, they played a 111-point team after coming off 3 straight runs to the Stanley Cup final. In 24 and 25, they ran into the eventual champions. Then this year, played an opponent where 96% of the series was played within a 1-goal margin. The issue isn't losing in the first round. That argument is directed at the NHL for having a playoff system where the 3rd and 4th best teams in the East can meet immediately, while another part of the bracket has the 7th and 8th ranked squads squaring off. The issue is, after 4 years, they have proven they are not good enough to win the East. This year was not a talent problem, though missing Victor Hedman and having a Shella Braden Point are certainly part of it. In my opinion, it's more of an identity crisis. The Lightning spent this entire season trying to prove they aren't going to be pushed around after what happened recently with the Panthers. They fought team after team after team during the preseason and regular season, setting a tone for the playoffs. At the beginning of this series, they played that villain card again. But is that really who they are? Or are they trying to be what they once were before Florida flipped the script? Because after Game 1, Montreal led in the hits category for every other game this series. They out-hit Tampa Bay by more than 70. What about blocked shots? Montreal won that category by north of 25. For a team that constantly searched for fights, could rarely be the aggressor in the game. They ended the season failing to lead in the first period for 22 straight matchups. And look, they were one of the best teams in the NHL in terms of comebacks, and that's an important trait to have. But it takes a toll on you when you constantly need to get a punch in the face to get into next gear. As tight as this series was, the Bolts led for less than 30 total minutes. Dating back to 2023, if we ignore empty netters, 16 of 23 Lightning playoff games were decided by a goal. They are 4-12 in those matchups. This is a franchise constantly losing by the thinnest of margins. Why is that? When the puck isn't bouncing your way and the hockey gods aren't in your corner, the team has to ask if it's making enough deposits into the bank to get a lucky break or two. Then there's the home playoff record. The team has won twice in their last 14 games. That is unthinkable. That is unacceptable. Game 7 was a tremendous effort with an unfortunate result, but not many of those other losses get a similar excuse. The Bolts were well aware of that terrible home record entering this season and proceeded to lose 14 games in regulation, a tie for the most in the last 15 years for this franchise. On paper, this is a Stanley Cup caliber squad. Statistically, analytically, one of the favorites for a reason. This group was ravaged by injuries, had a large chunk of its roster play in the Olympics, and still were a sniff away from winning the Atlantic. They absolutely should be in the Cup conversation again next year. This isn't about character, it's about callous and giving more in the playoffs when it matters the most. Coaches and players. They can't be chasing the ghost of what they were. They have to develop a new identity and a new route to winning a championship, not the formula John Cooper and his players figured out half a decade ago. When I walked out of that locker room last night, that was a stunned group of players we talked with. That's not a bad thing. In 2019, the Lightning were at a loss of words after that first-round sweep to Columbus. It forced many to recalibrate their thinking entering the following season. After a playoff exit, the finger-pointing from fans will always begin. Kucherov, Vasi, Cooper. If this was just about one individual, the solution would be easy. But the answer to this problem is much more complex than that. Listen to Vasi after the Game 6 win in overtime.
I'm pretty sure you're all aware of our overtime record, so to me it's hard to be frustrated when you don't have any expectations in overtime. So yeah, to me, I mean, we won, so I'll take that.
Does that sound like a guy who expects the best or the worst to happen to this team in crunch time? Julien Brisebois has to tinker with the roster construction. That's a given after every year. But there's also something not in the box score he has to figure out. This is a franchise of perennial playoff winners who are anything but that in the last 4 years. The Tampa Bay Findaways have lost their way. They have to figure out who they are in 2027. Discovering their identity is the key to creating the next iteration of Lightning champions in the not-so-distant future.